Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating story, one of incredible economic transformation.
We're diving into Singapore.
Exactly, Singapore.
And it really is a crucial case study. I mean, you look at it on a map, this tiny island nation,
Smaller than New York City, right?
definitely smaller than New York City, barely a speck, really.
Yeah.
But somehow, through, decades of really focused strategic planning, it's become the wealthiest country in Asia.
And one of the richest in the world, period.
It really is something.
That's the paradox we want to start with.
Yeah.
Here you have this place with, well, basically no natural resources in the traditional sense.
Right. No oil, not much land for farming. Even water was initially a big issue.
They essentially had to invent their own prosperity. And the results, the numbers speak for themselves. Singapore's GDP per capita hasn't just caught up with places like the UK or the US or France.
It's surpassed them significantly.
It's not just growth. It's like a
Yeah.
complete economic rewriting.
That's a good way to put it. And that's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To really unpack the formula, the specific, deliberate steps they took.
Because this didn't just happen by chance.
Not at all. It's the result, the very calculated result, of decades of governance, pretty much driven by the same political party since '65.
So understanding Singapore is really about understanding the power of long-term vision and, well, political will.
Absolutely.
So let's set the stage. Go back to the beginning. Independence, 1965. What was the core problem facing the first prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew, and the other leaders?
Well, it wasn't just economic, it was almost existential. They were suddenly independent, a small island, vulnerable, surrounded by larger neighbors.
And lacking those basic resources we mentioned.
Exactly. That scarcity, that lack, really shaped their entire strategy from day one. They knew they couldn't rely on digging things out of the ground.
So what was the alternative?
Build an economy based on exports. And crucially, attract foreign money, foreign capital. The immediate need, the first big push, was manufacturing.
Why manufacturing specifically?
To create jobs. They had huge unemployment issues right after independence. Manufacturing was seen as the way to get people working, to stabilize society.
Okay, so stage one is laying these foundations. Manufacturing is key, but how do you even start that without raw materials? Where's the leverage?
The leverage was their location. That was the one huge advantage they did have.
Right, the shipping lanes.
Smack bang in the middle of critical global shipping routes, the Straits of Malacca connecting the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea, the Pacific. It's a natural choke point for trade.
But just having a good location isn't enough, is it?
No, you have to exploit it. And they did. They didn't just have a port. They aggressively invested in making it the most efficient, the most advanced, the best managed transshipment hub anywhere in the region.
So turning geography into an economic weapon, almost.
You could say that. It was very deliberate. That focus on trade, on being a hub, that's pillar number one.
Okay, so the port is humming. But back to manufacturing, it must have started pretty basic.
Oh, absolutely. Labor-intensive stuff first. Assembling things, low-skill work initially. The goal then was purely jobs, tackling that unemployment crisis.
But Lee Kuan Yew didn't intend for that to be the end game.
No, not at all. He was very clear this was just a stepping stone, a training phase, if you like. Get the workforce discipline, get some basic skills, build up some capital, and then move up the value chain.
Okay, let's talk about moving up. Because just having cheap labor often leads to getting stuck, right? Low-value economies that don't progress. Singapore avoided that. How?
This is where the governance part really shines. They built the framework needed to attract serious long-term investment from big global companies.
What did that framework look like?
Two key things, really, beyond the economics. First, an absolute commitment to the rule of law and stability.
Meaning
Lee Kuan Yew made sure Singapore had a reputation for being stable, predictable, and importantly clean. Low corruption. Foreign companies need to know their investments are safe, that contracts mean something.
if they can't trust the system, the money goes elsewhere. Simple as that.
Precisely. That reputation for integrity was, and still is, a massive competitive advantage.
Okay, stability and rule of law. What was the second thing?
Infrastructure. Massive, sustained investment in world-class infrastructure.
We're talking roads, ports.
Yes, but also top-tier public transport, super efficient utilities, well-planned industrial parks. Think about the Jurong Industrial Estate. That was a huge government project, transforming swampland into this modern, functional manufacturing zone.
So they weren't just waiting for companies to show up. They were actively building the environment for them.
Absolutely. They were signaling to the world, we're serious, We're reliable. We can support complex operations. It wasn't just about being cheap. It was about being good, high functioning.
So managing the flow of goods through the port, building the physical spaces, and ensuring the legal and political stability. That sounds like incredibly detailed central planning.
It was meticulous top-down planning. They also focused on training the workforce, moving people from basic assembly to more skilled precision work. They created a disciplined, capable labor pool.
Which again signals to those multinational corporations, the MNCs, that this is a place for serious business.
Exactly. It shows how strategy and governance can really substitute for, having oil or minerals.
Okay, so manufacturing gets established, the workforce gets skilled up, capital starts accumulating. This sets the stage for the next big leap, right? The move into finance in the 1980s. That seems like the real engine of wealth today.
It absolutely is. But the transition was driven by, well, necessity as much as ambition.
How so?
As Singapore got more successful, labor costs naturally started to rise. Plus, other countries in the region started developing their own manufacturing. Singapore risked losing its edge if it just stayed focused on making things.
So they needed to move up the value chain again.
Right. Lee Kuan Yew saw the writing on the wall. He looked at established financial centers, London, New York, and thought, why not Singapore? Why couldn't Singapore be the financial gateway for a rapidly growing Asia?
A pretty bold ambition. How did they actually make that happen? What policies shifted?
The key was liberalization. They deliberately opened up their financial services sector.
What did that look like? Just letting anyone set up shop?
Not quite anarchy. It meant lowering barriers for big international banks, for asset managers. They implemented regulations that were seen as lighter touch compared to the West, particularly around moving capital across borders.
So easier to get money in and out.
Yes, but crucially, within a framework that was still very transparent, very predictable, and backed by that strong anti-corruption stance. They maintained the integrity, which built trust.
Was there a risk? Opening up a small economy like that to global capital flows?
Oh, definitely. Global finance can be volatile, but they calculated that the potential reward becoming the financial hub for the region was worth that risk.
And a big part of the attraction wasn't just the regulation, it was tax, wasn't it? That famous low tax rate.
The tax policy was and is a cornerstone, a massive magnet. They deliberately positioned Singapore as a low-tax place for companies to operate.
What's the standard rate?
The headline corporate tax rate is just 17%.
Which is already pretty low globally.
Very competitive.
Yeah.
Especially when you combine it with the stability, the infrastructure, the skilled workforce we talked about. It creates a really compelling package for MNCs looking for an Asia-Pacific base.
And I understand it can go even lower than 17% in some cases.
Absolutely. They use targeted incentives. So if a company is involved in specific activities, the government wants to encourage things like high-tech manufacturing, R&D, certain financial services, that effective tax rate can drop further.
Down to like 13.5% or maybe even less.
Exactly. It's very strategic. They're not just attracting any business. They're specifically targeting high-value operations, the headquarters, the research centers, the intellectual property hubs.
And the result of all this pro-business climate, the low taxes.
The scale is just immense. You look at the number of multinational companies that have chosen Singapore for their regional headquarters.
How many are we talking?
The figure is around 4,200 MNCs with regional HQs in Singapore.
4,200. That's staggering for a place that size.
It creates this incredible economic ecosystem. Jobs, obviously, but also demand for legal services, financial services, talent flows in, generates continuous revenue.
Yeah.
It's a powerful engine.
And this strategy didn't just stop with Lee Kuan Yew, did it? His successor kept the momentum going.
Right. Gow Chok Tong, who followed Lee, really leaned into this. But he also started shifting the emphasis slightly.
Towards what?
Towards what they call the knowledge-based economy, or KBE. Recognizing that long-term wealth wasn't just about handling money or goods, but about creating new value, innovation.
So moving beyond being an intermediary to being a source of ideas.
Exactly. Gow's government started actively channeling resources into things like R&D labs, funding for biomedical sciences, software development. They tweaked the education system to encourage more creativity, to foster local entrepreneurs.
So the focus shifted from the skilled factory technician to maybe the engineer, the researcher, the coder.
That's a good summary. It was about future-proofing, making sure Singapore stayed competitive by becoming a hub for intellectual capital, not just financial capital. They understood that the real value in the 21st century lies in IP, in technology.
Okay, so the financial engine is roaring. They're investing in innovation. Then comes the next phase under Lee Hsien-loong, Lee Kuan Yew's son, who took over in 2004. What was the new challenge he identified?
It seems the focus shifted towards retention. Okay, you've attracted the businesses, you've attracted the capital. How do you keep it there? And more specifically, how do you keep the people who control that capital, the ultra-wealthy, not just working there, but living there?
Making it a desirable place to be, not just a place to make money.
Precisely. Singapore had the stability, the tax benefit, but maybe lacked that high-end lifestyle factor that the global elite looks for. Lee Hsien Loong's era saw a deliberate push to transform the city-state into a destination.
And a big part of that involved physically changing the landscape, didn't it? That ambitious land reclamation.
We really have to pause on the land reclamation. It started way back in the 70s, but it continued aggressively. Singapore has actually increased its land area by something like 20% since independence,
Wow, building new land out of the sea.
creating prime real estate, essentially from scratch. This gave them the physical space needed for the new financial district, but also for these big lifestyle projects. They weren't hemmed in by their original geography.
So once they had the new land, what did they fill it with to attract and keep this wealthy crowd?
They started engineering high-end leisure right into the city's identity. Two things really stand out from this period.
Which were?
First, bringing in the Formula One race, specifically the night race.
Ah, yes, very spectacular.
Instantly put Singapore on the map globally as this dynamic, modern, exciting city. Great for image, great for tourism, attracts that jet-set crowd.
Okay, F1. What was the second big move?
This one was maybe more controversial domestically, allowing the development of large-scale casinos, or integrated resorts as they call them.
Right, the casino resorts. That must have been a tricky decision given Singapore's somewhat conservative social background.
It was a huge deal internally, but they managed it very strategically, addressing the social concerns while still capturing the economic benefits.
How did they thread that needle?
They used a clever policy, sometimes called a dual pricing system. Basically, they made it quite expensive for Singaporean citizens and permanent residents to enter the casinos, a hefty entry levy.
A sort of sin tax for locals?
Exactly, but for foreigners,
Yeah.
including the wealthy tourists and high rollers they were targeting, free entry.
Ah, so encourage the foreign money, discourage local gambling addiction, at least somewhat. That's quite pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. It was designed to maximize the inflow of tourism revenue and attract that high roller segment while appearing to protect their own population.
And the timing of these moves, the F1, the casinos, seems crucial again.
The timing was perfect, really. This push coincided with the massive economic booms happening in China and India nearby.
So a whole new wave of regional wealth being created.
Enormous wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And Singapore was perfectly placed geographically, financially, and now with these new lifestyle attractions to capture a big slice of it. Wealthy individuals from across Asia could park their money securely in Singapore's banks.
In that low-tax environment.
Right. And also enjoy the high-end hotels, the restaurants, the shopping, the F1, the casinos. It became a place to both store wealth and enjoy it.
Did it work? Did the money flow in as they hoped?
The numbers are just staggering. Look at assets under management, AUM.
Okay.
When Lee Hsien Loong took over, AUM in Singapore was around, say, $420 billion.
Okay, substantial.
By 2022, that figure had jumped to $3.6 trillion.
Whoa, from 420 billion to 3.6 trillion.
Almost a tenfold increase. It just shows the incredible magnetic effect of combining that stability, the low taxes, and this new world-class leisure and lifestyle infrastructure. It worked exactly as planned.
Okay, it's an incredible success story on many levels, but as with any deep dive, we need to look at the other side of the coin. This rapid engineered growth hasn't come without costs or internal friction, has it?
No, absolutely not. And it's crucial we look at that impartially. This model, while generating immense wealth, has involved trade-offs, particularly around politics and civil liberties.
This goes back to the foundations, doesn't it? The sort of deal offered by Lee Kuan Yew.
Essentially, yes. The implicit and sometimes explicit social contract was, we deliver stability, order, and prosperity, and in return, the population accepts significant limits on political dissent and certain freedoms.
Lee Kuan Yew was quite open about this, wasn't he? Famously so.
Very open. He argued that things like, quote, freedom of the press and news media had to take a backseat to the overriding needs of Singapore's security and integrity. This definitely created what critics described as a climate of fear.
where people might hesitate to speak out against the government.
Yes, for fear of consequences, whether professional or legal, that tight control was part of the model from the start.
And has that changed much over the years? Has the system loosened up as the country got richer and more modern?
Largely, no. Subsequent governments have maintained quite a firm grip. Our sources confirm that things like public protests are still heavily restricted, often effectively illegal.
So you have this tension, right? A highly developed, modern, connected population living under a governance model that still retains features from that earlier, more precarious era.
That's a central tension, yes.
Okay, let's shift to the economic side of the friction. For the average Singaporean, what are the downsides of this success story?
Well, the most immediate and tangible issue for many residents is the cost of living, especially housing.
Because all of this global capital flowing in pushes up asset prices.
Exactly. When you become a magnet for global wealth in such a small, land-scarce place, property values inevitably skyrocket. This makes housing incredibly expensive, and the general cost of living rises too, making it harder for ordinary wages to keep up.
It's interesting, though, because statistically, Singapore has actually done a better job of managing inequality than many other global cities, hasn't it? Through things like public housing.
That's a really important nuance, yes. If you look at the data, like the Gini coefficient, which measures inequality, the sources show Singapore has actually managed to reduce income disparity over time, which is quite remarkable.
How? What are the mechanisms?
A lot of it comes down to deliberate, large-scale public policy. The Housing and Development Board, the HDB, is key. The vast majority of Singaporeans live in HDB flats, which provides a baseline of affordable, quality housing.
Right, state-subsidized housing on a massive scale.
And then there's the Central Provident Fund, the CPF. That's the compulsory savings scheme covering retirement, healthcare, and even helping fund housing purchases. These act as powerful social safety nets and redistributive tools.
So the data says inequality is managed, maybe even reducing. Why, then, do we hear about discontent among residents?
Because, as the source material notes, that's not how some residents feel. Perception matters hugely. People see the immense wealth, the luxury cars, the condos, the expats.
They feel squeezed.
They feel squeezed by the rising costs, yes. And there's also significant resentment around foreign labor.
The idea that foreigners are taking the good jobs.
That's the common refrain. Foreigners are taking too many of the good jobs. Even if the data doesn't fully support it across the board, it feeds into a sense of anxiety and competition, especially among the local workforce who feel the pressures of globalization very directly.
So there's this inherent conflict. The economy needs foreign talent to keep growing, especially in those high-skill KBE sectors.
But the local population feels the pressure from that influx, both in the job market and in terms of cost of living. It's a difficult balance.
And adding to all these pressures is a longer-term challenge. Demographic.
Yes, the aging population. Like many developed nations, Singapore's population is aging rapidly. Fewer workers supporting more retirees.
Which puts huge strain on government budgets,
Yeah.
right? Healthcare, pensions.
Exactly. And it also impacts workforce growth, potentially slowing down the economic engine itself. The major structural challenge they have to navigate.
Okay, so that brings us pretty much to the present day. Singapore is juggling immense success with these significant internal pressures, and it's doing so during its first leadership change in 20 years.
Right. The handover to the new Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, is a pivotal moment.
What's his background? How is he seen differently from his predecessors?
Well, he comes from a slightly different background. He grew up in HDB public housing, which resonates with many Singaporeans, and he gained a lot of public visibility and, frankly, praise for his handling of the country's COVID-19 response.
So he's seen as having maybe more of a connection to the average person.
That's the perception, yes.
Yeah.
Observers talk about him having more of a common man's touch, which could be very important in addressing some of that socioeconomic discontent we discussed.
What's his main task now? What's the mandate?
It's really a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
He needs to manage these rising public expectations. Demands for more, say, concerns about living costs, while ensuring Singapore continues to evolve economically, pushing further into that high-tech, knowledge-based future.
Keep the KBE momentum going, AI, deep tech, advanced manufacturing.
While also addressing the bread and butter issues that people are feeling.
And he's doing this in a political climate that's also shifting. The dominance of the ruling PIP isn't quite what it used to be.
That's right. The political landscape is becoming more contested. While the People's Action Party is still firmly in charge, sources indicate its overall share of the vote has been declining. There's more political competition,
Meaning,
meaning we're likely to see, as analysts predict, politicking that happens much more intensely in the years to come than there was ever before. Wong has to navigate a more complex and vocal domestic political scene than his predecessors really did.
but his initial messaging seems to emphasize continuity as well as change.
Yes, he's been clear about building on the foundations. His stated goal is, quote, "We should build on what we have today. We should affirm and reinforce what works well for Singapore."
The big question is, what does works well mean to a population that might have different priorities now compared to 1965?
That's the core challenge he faces, redefining that social contract for a new era.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all of this. We've covered a huge amount of ground. What are the key takeaways from Singapore's journey?
I think the most powerful lesson is how absolutely critical focused governance and long-term strategy are. They literally created wealth where none existed naturally.
And the blueprint involved several key elements we've discussed.
Right. Leveraging location for trade dominance, smart pro-business policies, especially those low targeted corporate taxes that attracted those 4,200 MNCs, heavy investment in education and workforce skills, building world-class infrastructure.
And then that later phase, strategically using lifestyle and entertainment, the F1, the casinos, to become a destination and retain global capital and talent.
It really underscores the power of planning, stability, and continuous adaptation. They didn't just find a formula and stick to it, they kept evolving it.
It's held up as a model, isn't it, for countries wanting to build high-tech, prosperous economies?
It definitely is. It shows what's possible, even without traditional resources, if you get the governance, the financial policies, the education piece right. They engineered their success at the intersection of global trade and finance.
But that engineering, as we noted, involved significant trade-offs, particularly on the political and civil liberties front, and that seems to be the pressure point now.
It absolutely is. And that leads us to the final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to consider. Singapore built its incredible economic success on a model that relied heavily on decades of tight political control and social cohesion.
A model forged in a different time under different pressures.
Exactly. Now you have rising political competition, you have a more diverse, more educated, more vocal population that seems to be demanding greater participation, more of the civil liberties common elsewhere.
So the fundamental question is,
Can Singapore maintain that incredibly successful, tightly managed economic engine while also opening up politically? Can it grant the kinds of freedoms its modern population increasingly seems to desire without undermining the stability that was core to its original success?
it's the ultimate balancing act. Stability versus liberty, growth versus openness.
It's a fascinating experiment, as you say, and one the whole world will be watching.
Indeed. A huge thank you for guiding us through that intricate story, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.